Amici cari, salve and welcome once more to the Italian-American Experience. I am Lina del Tinto. Well, today my guest is a real Renaissance woman. Jane Marsh is an opera singer. She lectures, she gives master classes, she writes. I don't know what she doesn't do, and she travels a lot too for her singing. I'm delighted to present Jane Marsh.
Hello.
That almost sounds like the title of a film, presenting Jane Marsh.
Let's make a film.
Allora, Jane, as I said, you're a Renaissance woman, but let's talk about, first of all, your opera career. And tell us how you were such a sensation in Spoleto as a very, very young person, because you had to be in Spoleto at that time. That's Spoleto in Italy, not Spoleto, in the South. Not the Spoleto, you would say, but the original one. And she sang under Thomas Shippers.
Are you interested to know how that came about?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
I was, as a college student, I was in the Met auditions and was offered a contract at the Metropolitan Opera and didn't accept it because I was still in college. And the Met called me one day while I was in my finals at college and said, Jane, we really want to keep very strongly in contact with you, and Maestro Shippers would like very much to hear a soprano to sing Desdemona in Spoleto. Would you consider coming back to New York? And would you, I was at Oberlin College at the time, and would you mind singing for him because he's very interested? And I did that, and I sang for him, and he accepted me as Desdemona, and so I was just a bambina and singing Desdemona in Spoleto. That's how it happened. So I have to thank the Met for that, actually.
That is an incredible story. And you did not accept a contract with the Met because you felt you were too young?
I was too young, but I hadn't finished school yet. And it's very unusual that a college student is involved in the Met auditions and wins and gets involved that heavily. But I felt if I started at the Met at that age and without finishing school, that it wasn't really the kind of entrance to the Met that I was looking for.
Of course.
So I thought I was doing the right thing, and as it turned out, I probably was.
Yes, I'm sure you did too, because I think singers often do that. They go, even though they can sing here, they still prefer to go to Europe, or at least a stint.
Well, I didn't have to go to Europe, because directly after that, I was the first singer to win the Tchaikovsky competition, which, as you know, through the years before, Van Cliburn won it and put it on the map as a the most important competition. And having won that years after Van, but anyway, as the first singer, because it was then when the vocal competition was submitted, I was already at the top of the profession just through that competition. So I didn't have to go to Europe as most singers did. But I went to Europe anyway because I wanted to become versed in languages and I wanted to become versed in repertoire. I stayed close to the United States, but I've always kept a foot in Europe, which is probably a very good idea. Now it's not as necessary and as mandatory to go to Europe as it used to be, but it still is a good idea because the singers don't get as well-rounded otherwise.
Yes, yes, absolutely. I think you were very wise to do that. Now tell me about your days in Spoleto when the first time you sang it. That must have been so exciting. I mean,
oh, I loved it.
You were so young.
I loved it.
And to have a big role like that in Spoleto, of all places, world-renowned, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I can tell you that it was a wonderful experience, and Spoleto was, I immediately got a cold, of course, because we were starting in June, and the theater had been closed all winter, and it was still very cold, so the advice of that is don't sing in a cold theater. But I got over the cold soon, and I was then offered contracts to sing in some of the major houses in Italy, which I did, but then there was a hiatus of maybe 3 years where I didn't sing in Italy at all, and all of a sudden, I got a call from an English manager, interestingly enough, to take over a role of an obscure opera with the Naples radio. An opera from Traetta, an obscure composer, and the opera's name was La Sofonisba, and I was asked to sing the title role. And through that experience, I was relaunched in Italy, and not only was singing repertoire that was not Italian, but I began singing the obscure Italian repertoire as well as the standard Italian repertoire. So as an American singing Italian repertoire in Italy, in major houses, that at that time was very, very rare.
I would think so. But didn't you feel a bit daunted by having to face this obscure opera by an obscure composer, and you had to learn the whole thing?
Well, apparently not. I welcomed it. I had fun in it, and I loved the challenge, and I loved Italy, and I loved the people, and I loved the whole experience, and I just included Italy into my whole life experience. It's still part of my life experience. I love Italy.
Dear, dear, dear.